Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive all about motivation. Looks like you've sent over some really interesting research articles, some pretty in-depth stuff on what motivates people. Whether it's in our work life or even something like fitness, it seems like this goes way deeper than your average self-help stuff.
Absolutely. We're going to be getting into some real science today. Really excited to explore all the nuances of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and unpack how these forces affect how we act, how we think, even our sense of fulfillment.
Awesome. I already get my mind blown. One thing that really stood out to me was this idea that rewards can actually backfire, which seems kind of counterintuitive, since we usually think of rewards as motivators.
Yeah, it really is. Let's unpack that together first to lay the groundwork. How about we start with some classic definitions of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, like the ones outlined by Porter and Lawler back in 1968. So intrinsic motivation is all about doing something because you love it. The activity itself is the reward. Think of that feeling of flow you get when you're fully absorbed in something you enjoy, like painting or playing music, or even just losing yourself in a really good book. Time flies by because you're totally engaged and enjoying the experience for its own sake.
Okay, so it's that pure joy of doing something you love, just for the fun of it. But what about those times when we're motivated by something outside of ourselves,
Hmm?
like a reward, or even maybe avoiding some kind of punishment?
Exactly. That's where extrinsic motivation comes in. It's when we're driven by something outside of ourselves. Things like getting a bonus at work,
Mm.
or good grades in school, or even just avoiding trouble.
So to use some real-world examples, like acing a presentation at work to get that promotion, that would be extrinsic motivation. But spending hours on a passion project in your free time just because you love it, that's more intrinsic.
Exactly. The main difference is where that drive comes from. Intrinsic motivation is all internal, and extrinsic motivation is from the outside world. And for a long time, people thought extrinsic rewards were the key to boosting motivation. But like you mentioned before, some really groundbreaking research, specifically a 1999 meta-analysis by Desi Kostner and Ryan, showed a pretty surprising twist. Tangible rewards can actually undermine intrinsic motivation, especially when those rewards are expected and tied directly to a task.
Okay, so something meant to increase motivation can sometimes do the opposite. How does that even work?
It all comes down to a change in perception. Let's say you love playing basketball, but then someone starts paying you for every basket you make. Suddenly, the focus shifts from just the pure fun of the game to the external reward. It starts to feel less like play and more like work, and your intrinsic motivation takes a hit.
I can see how that would happen. I bet a lot of artists, musicians, and athletes experience that firsthand.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where self-determination theory, or SDT, comes in. It offers a more nuanced view of motivation. It was developed by Deci and Ryan. And it suggests that motivation isn't this simple on-off switch. It's more of a spectrum ranging from e-motivation, which is zero drive at all, to intrinsic motivation, which we already talked about. But the key takeaway here is that between those two extremes lies a whole continuum of different types of extrinsic motivation.
Wow, so there are different types of extrinsic motivation. That's pretty interesting. I'm starting to see why STT offers a much deeper understanding of motivation.
Exactly. And understanding all these subtle differences can be really helpful, whether you're trying to motivate yourself or others. So why don't we take a closer look at that STT continuum? Let's start with the least self-determined type, external regulation. Think of it like doing something just to get a reward or avoid a punishment. It's totally a do this or else kind of motivation.
Okay, so like studying for a test just to pass,
Yeah.
not because you actually care about the material.
Perfect example. Now, as we go further along the continuum, we get to introjected regulation, which is a little bit more internalized. It's fueled by things like guilt obligation or even just the need to maintain self-esteem. It's like that voice in your head telling you, I should do this,
Mhm.
even though you don't really want to.
Like dragging yourself to the gym even when you're not feeling it, just
Sure.
because you told yourself you would.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
not super thrilled about it, but you feel like you have to do it for these internal reasons. Then the next level up is identified regulation. Here, you actually see the value in a task, even if it isn't exactly enjoyable. You do it because it fits with your broader goals or your values.
So maybe it's like going to a networking event. Even though you're super introverted, you don't really love the small talk, but you know it's important for your career goals.
Exactly. You see the value in it. You're not doing it because you feel forced or guilty. And finally, we reach the most autonomous type of extrinsic motivation, integrated regulation. Here, the activity has become so aligned with who you are and what you value that it almost feels like a natural part of you.
It sounds like it's almost like intrinsic motivation, but with some outside element still present. I'm trying to wrap my head around the difference.
It is subtle, but there is a key difference. With integrated regulation, the activity itself might not be inherently enjoyable, but it's been so fully internalized that it feels totally in line with your identity and values.
So like someone who volunteers tons of time to a cause they deeply believe in. They aren't getting paid or recognition or anything, but their actions are so aligned with what they care about that it feels like a genuine expression of who they are.
Great example. It shows how SDT helps us understand how complex motivation really is. It's not just black and white, there are all these shades of gray in between.
This is already giving me a whole new way of thinking about how I approach my own goals and motivations. But I am curious about one thing. What makes certain people more likely to internalize extrinsic motivation and move towards that integrated regulation end of the spectrum?
That is a great question, and it takes us to another really important part of SDT, which are the three basic psychological needs that are essential for healthy, sustainable motivation. These needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Think of them like the building blocks for solid motivation.
So these three needs are like the secret formula for thriving motivation.
Exactly. Let's start with autonomy. It's all about feeling like you have a choice and control over your own actions. When you feel autonomous, you're way more likely to be intrinsically motivated and to really embrace challenges.
So it's not just about having freedom, but also about feeling like you're in charge of your own life.
Precisely. It's about feeling ownership over your choices and actions. Now, competence is the need to feel capable and effective at what you do. When you feel competent, you're more likely to persevere through challenges and aim for mastery.
I can totally see how feeling skilled and capable would fuel motivation. It's that feeling of accomplishment you get when you finally nail a difficult recipe or learn a new skill. It just makes you want to keep going.
Exactly. And last but not least, we have relatedness, which is that need to feel connected to others, to belong, to have meaningful relationships. When that need is met, you feel supported, cared for, and like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
That makes total sense. We're social creatures after all. Feeling connected to others can definitely boost motivation, whether it's through a supportive team at work or a close group of friends who cheer you on.
Absolutely. And here's the fascinating part. Research shows that when all three of these needs are met, you're not only more likely to be intrinsically motivated, but also more likely to internalize those extrinsic motivations, which then leads to greater well-being, more engagement, and even better performance in all areas of life.
Wow. So it's not just about finding work or activities we're naturally passionate about, but also about making sure our environments support our need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Exactly. And the great thing about SDT is that it applies to every part of life, from our personal relationships to our health and education. It's a framework for understanding and nurturing motivation in a really holistic way.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's like a whole new way of looking at motivation, not just as a means to an end, but as something that can have a huge impact on our well-being and sense of fulfillment. Let's get practical for a second.
Oh.
How does STT actually play out in the real world? Are there any examples of how these principles have been used to make a real difference in people's lives?
Tons. SDT has been used to study and improve motivation in all kinds of settings, from workplaces to schools to healthcare, and the results are pretty impressive. One study I find particularly interesting was done by Bard and colleagues in 2004. They looked at how autonomy-supportive managers impacted the well-being and performance of bankers.
Bankers. That's not exactly a field known for being super flexible and autonomous.
You'd be surprised. This study found that when managers made a more supportive environment, by giving their employees more freedom and choice, really acknowledging their perspectives, and providing good reasons and feedback, those bankers were way more satisfied with their jobs and felt more engaged in their work.
So even in a structured environment like banking, encouraging autonomy can make a big difference.
Yeah, huge difference. And what's even more impressive is that those bankers also showed better performance. Seems like when people feel a sense of ownership over their work, they're more likely to go above and beyond.
Wow, that's really powerful. It makes you think that creating a more autonomy-supportive work environment isn't just about keeping employees happy. It can actually boost the company's bottom line. Are there any other examples of SDT at work that you can think of?
Definitely. Another fascinating study by Richer and his team in 2002, they focused on the long-term outcomes of intrinsic aspirations. They followed up with alumni from a business school and found that the ones who went after careers that align with their core values and interests, what SDT calls intrinsic aspirations, ended up reporting much higher job satisfaction, lower burnout rates, and even better performance years later.
So it's not just about finding any job, it's about finding a career path that truly speaks to who you are.
Exactly. It highlights how aligning your actions with your values and passions can lead to lasting success and fulfillment.
This is really inspiring. It makes me wonder if there are specific strategies people can use to figure out their own intrinsic aspirations and make choices that are more in line with their true selves.
Oh, definitely. And we can dive into those a bit later. But for now, let's switch gears a bit and explore another really interesting area of research: how the type of motivation we feel impacts our performance.
Ooh, that sounds juicy. Does that mean being intrinsically motivated leads to better results?
Another great question. And the answer, like with most things in life, is complicated. Research suggests that the kind of motivation we feel can affect not just how well we do overall, but also the quality of that performance.
Okay, so it's not just about how much we get done, but also how well we do it.
Mhm.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
This idea goes back to McGraw's work in 1978. He was the one who separated tasks into two types: algorithmic tasks, which are more routine and straightforward, and heuristic tasks, which require creativity and problem solving. You can think of algorithmic tasks like following a set of instructions, while heuristic tasks involve thinking outside the box and coming up with brand new
So
solutions.
like data entry versus brainstorming new marketing campaigns.
Exactly. And McGraw found that external rewards, while they were great for those algorithmic, quantity-focused tasks, actually made people perform worse on heuristic tasks, the ones that required more creativity and critical thinking.
That's so fascinating. It seems like if you're trying to get people to be more innovative or solve problems creatively, relying on external rewards might not be the best strategy.
Exactly. And this finding was backed up by a massive meta-analysis by Sarah Soley and colleagues in 2014. Their research dug even deeper into the relationship between intrinsic motivation and the quality of someone's work.
So what did they find? Did intrinsic motivation actually lead to better performance on those creative tasks?
They did. They discovered that when people were driven by intrinsic motivation, they tended to do better on tasks that involved more than just following the rules. Basically, intrinsic motivation was a key predictor of how good someone's work was.
That makes sense. When you're truly passionate about something, you're way more likely to go the extra mile
Yeah,
and come up with those really innovative solutions.
exactly. They also found that different ways of giving rewards predicted different types of performance. Incentives that were directly tied to the outcome of your work led to more output.
So if you're all about speed and getting things done fast, those performance-based rewards can work. But if quality and creativity are more important, then fostering intrinsic motivation seems like the way to go.
Precisely. And that brings us to a really interesting question. How do these motivation principles show up in our everyday lives, outside of the usual areas of work and achievement?
Ooh, I'm all ears. I'm starting to see motivation everywhere. Where should we explore next?
Well, we all spend a lot of time as consumers, right? Interacting with brands, products, and services. Believe it or not, SDT can actually help us understand what drives us in this area, too.
So you mean the same needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness that motivate us at work and in our personal lives also affect how we shop and interact with brands?
Exactly. In 2021, Li Sheng and Say did a study. They look at how SDT could explain consumer behavior, especially when it comes to shopping malls.
Shopping malls. Okay, I'm intrigued. What do they find?
What's interesting about this study is they didn't just look at what people buy. They looked at the whole experience of being in a mall. They wanted to see how specific things about malls could affect shoppers' feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
So it wasn't just about getting people to spend money. It was about making the shopping experience more enjoyable and engaging.
Precisely. And one of the big things they looked at was something called retail innovative technologies, which includes things like interactive displays, personalized recommendations, and mobile payment systems.
Okay, I'm curious. How does a mobile payment system make you feel more autonomous?
Well, think about it. If you can breeze through checkout without digging for cash or cards, you feel more efficient and in control. It's a small thing, but it can actually increase your sense of autonomy as a consumer.
Ah, I see what you mean. It's like that feeling you get when you order groceries online and get them delivered. It just makes things easier and gives you back that sense of control over your time.
Exactly. And in the same way, personalized recommendations can make you feel more competent by helping you find products that match your individual tastes and needs.
So it's kind of like having a personal shopper who knows your style and can point you in the right direction.
Exactly. And when it comes to relatedness, malls often create spaces where people can hang out, eat, and socialize. These features can create a feeling of belonging and connection, which satisfies that need for relatedness.
It reminds me of those outdoor malls with comfy seating areas and live music. They're not just about shopping. They're places to catch up with friends and family, or even just people watch and soak up the atmosphere.
Exactly. And the beauty of SDT is that these same needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, can be the driving force behind our motivations in so many other parts of our lives. Think about your health goals, or learning something new, or your personal relationships. When those needs are met, you're so much more likely to thrive.
This deep dive is already giving me a whole new perspective on motivation. It's not just about achieving things. It's about living a life that supports our fundamental needs and allows us to express who we truly are.
That's a fantastic insight, and it highlights how understanding SDT can give us the power to make choices that lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I'm feeling so inspired already. But before we get too carried away, I'm curious about what's next for motivation research. Are there any big questions researchers are still trying to figure out?
There are always more questions to explore. Motivation research is always evolving as scientists learn more about the complexities of human behavior.
Based on the research you've gathered, is there anything that stands out as a particularly interesting area for future research?
Absolutely. In 2017, Dishy Olafson and Ryan wrote an article outlining some really exciting directions for future research. And one that really caught my attention was the impact of need frustration. We've talked a lot about the good things that happen when our needs are met, but what happens when they're not? How does that affect our motivation, well-being, and performance?
That's a great question. It makes me think about workplaces where employees feel micromanaged and lack a sense of autonomy, or relationships where people don't feel heard or connected. How do we cope when those basic needs aren't being met?
It's a crucial area to study, especially in today's world. And another interesting direction is understanding how pay systems affect how we internalize work values. We talked about the potential downsides of performance-based pay, but how can we design compensation structures that actually encourage autonomy and support intrinsic motivation instead of working against them?
That's a huge question for businesses. It feels like there's a real opportunity to create workplaces that aren't just productive, but also really motivating and fulfilling for the people who work there.
Absolutely. And finally, researchers are working on developing even better ways to measure different types of motivation. As our understanding of motivation gets more nuanced, we need better tools to assess and measure it accurately.
So it's like giving scientists a more powerful microscope
Hmm.
to examine all the intricate workings of motivation.
Exactly. And these more precise tools will allow for even more insightful research in the future, which could lead to new interventions and strategies to boost motivation in all areas of life.
This deep dive has already given me so much to think about. It's amazing how much research has been done on motivation. And it's so exciting to think about all the new discoveries yet to come.
It really shows how crucial motivation is to our well-being, our performance, and how fulfilled we feel overall. And as we keep unraveling all the mysteries of motivation, we get these valuable insights into what truly drives us and how to build a more satisfying and meaningful life.
I couldn't agree more. This has been a super eye-opening conversation so far, and I can't wait to keep exploring. What other fascinating insights do you have for us from the research?
You know, we've covered a lot of theory and looked at some pretty interesting research, but I think it's important to bring it all back to you and think about what it means for your life.
For sure. That's what these deep dives are all about, connecting the research with the real world. So what are some of the key takeaways our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Well, first off, I think it's really important to recognize how powerful intrinsic motivation is. When you're genuinely passionate about something, you're more likely to stick with it, you'll excel at it, and you'll get so much satisfaction from it.
It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. But like we talked about before, you got to watch out for those potential pitfalls of rewards, especially for things you already enjoy. Rewards can work in some situations, but they can also kind of kill that natural spark.
So it's not that rewards are bad, it's more about being smart about how we use them.
Exactly. And another big takeaway from SDT is how important those three basic psychological needs are. Autonomy, competence, and relatedness. They're like the fuel that keeps your motivation engine running. When those needs are met, you're much more likely to thrive in all parts of your life.
Okay, I'm curious, what does it actually look like to create environments that support those needs? Are there any practical tips our listeners can use?
Absolutely. Let's start with autonomy. One simple but powerful strategy is to give yourself more choices, even in small areas of life. So instead of letting your to-do list control your whole day, set aside some time for things you truly enjoy, things that make you feel like you're in the driver's seat.
So instead of just reacting to things all the time,
Yeah.
I can proactively Make space for the things that bring me joy
Ye-
and make me feel more in control.
Exactly. Now, when it comes to competence, focus on setting goals that challenge you, but don't overwhelm you. Break down those bigger tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. And celebrate your progress as you go.
I love that. It's like those video games where you level up gradually, mastering new skills along the way. It keeps you motivated and engaged.
That's a perfect analogy. And finally, for relatedness, make an effort to connect with others. Spend quality time with the people you care about. Do things that create a sense of community. And don't hesitate to reach out for support when you need it.
These are such great tips. I'm already feeling more empowered just hearing them. But I think it's important to remember that motivation isn't one size fits all. We all have our own unique styles, shaped by our personalities, experiences, and values.
Absolutely. And recognizing those differences is crucial. What motivates one person might not work for someone else. It's all about finding what clicks for you and trying different things to see what works
That
best.
makes sense. It's like figuring out what kind of fuel your car needs. You wouldn't put diesel in a gas engine, right?
Exactly. And that's why this deep dive has really just scratched the surface. I encourage you to keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep learning about what makes you tick.
It's like a lifelong journey of self-discovery. Who knows what amazing insights you'll uncover along the way. But before we send our listeners off on their motivational quest, I want to leave them with one final thought. We've talked about different types of motivation, the effects of rewards, and how important it is to have those basic needs met. But what if understanding your own personal motivation style could actually be the key to creating a more fulfilling life?
That's a powerful question. Imagine knowing exactly what makes you tick, what gets you excited, and what just drains your energy.
It's like having a blueprint for building a life that's truly aligned with who you are.
Exactly. By understanding your own motivational tendencies, you can make more conscious choices about the people you surround yourself with, the work you do, even the hobbies you pursue.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's like unlocking a whole new level of self-awareness. That could change everything.
It's an ongoing process. Approach it with curiosity and an open mind. Pay attention to what gives you energy, what makes you feel truly alive, and what leaves you feeling drained or unfulfilled.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing how something as complex as motivation
Yeah.
can be broken down into these practical insights.
And remember, the journey of motivation is never really over. There will be highs and lows, moments of inspiration and times when you struggle. The key is to keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep believing in your ability to grow and change.
I'm feeling so inspired right now. I'm ready to take all these insights and start applying them to my own life. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to those future research directions you mentioned. You talked about the impact of need frustration and how to design pay systems that actually support intrinsic motivation. Are there any other areas of research you think are super important for the future of motivation science?
There are just so many exciting areas to explore. One that I think is really promising is how motivation and technology interact. As our world gets more and more digital, it's super important to understand how technology can support our basic psychological needs rather than get in the way.
That makes a lot of sense. We talk about how mobile payments and personalized recommendations can increase feelings of autonomy and competence, but I imagine there are tons of other ways to design technology that promotes motivation and well-being.
Oh, for sure. Like researchers are looking at how virtual reality can be used to create immersive learning environments that really engage students and help them develop a sense of mastery.
That's awesome. It's like taking educational video games to a whole new level. What other cool tech innovations are on the horizon for motivation science?
Another really interesting area is using artificial intelligence to personalize motivation strategies. Like imagine having an AI coach that tracks your progress, gives you personalized feedback,
Okay.
and nudges you toward your goals in a way that feels really supportive.
That would be incredible, like having a personal motivational guru in your pocket. But I also wonder about the potential downsides of relying too much on technology for motivation. Could it make us dependent on it? Or even weaken our own ability to motivate ourselves?
That's a valid point. It's all about balance, using technology to complement our own drive, not replace it.
It's like using a GPS when you're in a new city.
Yeah,
It can be super helpful, but you don't want to become so reliant on it that you completely lose your sense of direction.
exactly. The ultimate goal is to empower people to become more self-aware and to build those internal sources of motivation.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. It's amazing to see how much we're learning about motivation, and there's still so much more to uncover.
And the more we learn about motivation, the better equipped we are to create a world where people feel inspired and engaged and fulfilled in everything they do.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you think our listeners should know about this amazing world of motivation?
I think we've covered the main points, but if I could leave everyone with one last thought, it would be don't underestimate the power of small changes. Even tiny adjustments to your environment, mindset, or daily routine can have a big impact on your motivation and well-being.
I love that. It's like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
One little flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane halfway across the world. So even the small steps we take to boost our motivation can lead to massive changes in our lives.
Exactly. And remember, motivation is a journey, not a destination. You'll hit some bumps along the way, but that's all part of it. Embrace the challenges, celebrate your wins, and never stop exploring what truly drives you.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I'm feeling so energized and inspired, ready to keep learning and growing.
That's great to hear. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of motivation. We hope you've enjoyed it and that you're feeling inspired to create a life that truly reflects who you are.
Until next time, keep those motivational fires burning.